So right here, I have the Donner D1. It's a small drum machine, very affordable. It's not a sampler. It does not have no input to sample into this drum machine, but it does let you play back pre-recorded samples. So I have a bunch of samples right here on my computer, which I'm able to connect this through the USB cable in the back and drag and drop all my samples that I have. Now, this does come with some samples already pre-installed, which you could use right out of the box, but I just scratched all those samples. So I brought my kicks, snares, and hi-hats and just loaded up these folders, leaving nothing but my favorite sounds to play back. Now, obviously, once you connect it and load up your own samples, you could unplug this, take this portable, take it with you, which has 2 workflows in one box. It lets you do your own freely recorded sequences, or it also has a step sequencer. So if you just want to carry around some of your favorite one-shots, drum samples, or any other type of samples, load them up into this device and walk out the door with a piece of hardware that has your samples loaded up. Or if you want to sample these into another drum machine or another sampler, it will allow you to do that. Now, let me go over some of my favorite workflow features that stood out to me when I first got this. I'll be honest with you, if it's not an MPC, I feel a little lost and I'm like, man, I don't think it's worth it for me to try to figure it out and learn a new machine, because it takes a lot of time and it's time consuming. But right out of the box with this Donner D1 is actually really simple to navigate the machine. Now, let me show you how easy it is to load up samples. You have this USB-C connection on the back of it, which is as easy of just opening up the software on your computer, dragging over some of your favorite one-shots or melodic samples. If you have those already chopped up on your DAW, you can just drag them over from the app, and as soon as you drag them over, they're already loaded up into the Donner D1. You could unplug that cable, and after you unplug it, you will now have a library full of your favorite drum shots and create kits from your library. Now, this has a really simple layout. Right here, you have all your pads, and each pad is labeled. Like, this is your bass drum, SD is your snare drum, low tom, so on and so on. That's the way they have it laid out, but you do not have to be using a snare drum or a bass drum. You could load any one-shots or any samples into any of these pads. At the very top right here, these are for your samples, sample 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, I have some of my one-shots right here. I have my kick, my snare, hi-hat, some samples up here. There's not a lot going on right here, but the few things that it gives you is the things that you need to just get going and start coming up with ideas. Let's say our hi-hat, snare, and drum and bass drum. If I want to lower down the hi-hat, you got these 3 different banks. Bank A will represent this first row of pads. Bank B will represent the second row of pads. Bank C is your third row of pads. So if I wanted to lower down the hi-hat volume really fast, go to Bank A, lower that down. The snare, lower that down. Kick, same thing with our samples up here. At the bottom right here, you also have no repeat, so you hold down the hi-hat. And these 2 are fills. This is actually really cool. I'll show you how they use this later on as I'm building a beat, but this is pretty cool. You create your own fills. So whenever you press that pad, automatically it will, at the end of a bar, just start performing your pre-recorded fill, and then it goes back to the normal sequence that we had. So right here, I actually have a beat with these different samples. And when it comes down to mute groups, it makes it so easy where we are performing our mute groups and it's all within a push of a button. If I hit play and I want to mute a certain pad, I just hold down mute right here. I unmute. I want to mute the kick. Very simple. And same thing with solo. You see the solos underneath, so that's the shift function. If I hold down shift, solo, I can solo different pads right here. Now, something that stood out, and I have not seen this in any other sampler, is this fill function right here. If I want to record a fill, I'll hold down record and then fill, and now it starts blinking, and now I just hit record and play and record a fill right here. Now, I'm obviously not a good finger drummer, but you get the idea. You can record your own fill right there. And to get out of record, hold record, the fill. And now that we're out of that record function, whenever I hit fill, at the end of a bar, it'll throw in that quick fill, and then it'll go back to your normal sequence. that's something different that I haven't experimented or tried with anything else. And also, especially for someone like me that I'm not a really good finger drummer, I'm able to just curate my own fills. There's actually 2 different fills options, and then every now and then I can just trigger one of those fills, and then it goes back to the beat the way I had it. Now, something else that's really cool is I'm able to audition or switch out the one shots or the samples in these pads in real time. So if I'm playing back the beat and there's like a hi-hat that I'm not really feeling, I just select the hi-hat. I go right here to this value, click it in as a button, and right here I have my folders full of different samples. I have my hi-hat folder right here. I can audition them by just clicking them. Really simple to audition and try different samples out. Now, like I said, everything that it has, which is not a lot of different settings, but it's the settings that I need to build my own drum kit, jot out ideas. Maybe you don't even want to put on samples right here. Maybe you just want to use this for your drums and one shots and just record different beats and just store them right here and just save them. Later on, you come back to your box right here, connect it into your DAW, and just record with your audio outputs your grooves that you're saving onto this beat machine. Now, what's really cool about this is that each individual pad will have a different set of effects. For instance, my kick drum, if I hit my kick drum, use a pitch, I can higher up the pitch or lower down the pitch. Same thing with my samples. Since I always like to pitch up or down my samples, I get that right here with a push of a button. Which that's a must for me, since I always like to pitch down my samples. I always like having that axis just straight from the main page, no menu diving. I have that right there if I just need to pitch something up or down. Now, there's different parameters for each individual pad. Now, right here, this is assuming this is your bass drum. If I go right here, we went over, there's the pitch, there's also a decay. Or there's these different parameters, parameter 1 and parameter 2. The parameter for the kick will be a low pass filter. Or parameter 2 is going to be this awesome distortion effect right here that you can add to the kick drum. Now the next one is going to be your pan. You can pan this left or right, and then you have your effects return, which is pretty cool because this comes with 3 different effects internally for either your master bus, or if you just want to add an effect which is reverb and delay to any of these pads. Very simple. Let's say on the snare, I want to add some reverb on this snare. As you see, there's reverb at the very top over here. To access that reverb, I just hold down shift, and as I'm holding down shift, I can bring up the reverb or down. Well, that's the delay, very fast. Bring it down, and the reverb. Again, everything is really fast to access. You don't have to menu dive. The only thing you have to do when it comes down to menu diving, from what I found, is just loading up different projects and also just auditioning your samples. Other than those 2 things, everything else has been something I can access right from the device within the hardware. Oh, and actually another thing that you have to go into a menu is when you go to your master effects, you got a bus compressor. If you want to get into your bus compressor, you click it down, and right here you could have this awesome bus compressor affecting your entire beat machine. And then also, if you go back, you have your reverb. If you want to go down right here, what type of reverb do you want this to be? I have it set to room, but you can switch different types of reverb. There's a hall reverb. There's a church. Now, there's this other hi-hat right here. Assuming this is your hi-hat, these parameters are different for these right here. This is the cutoff, but this is going to be a high-pass filter. This is really cool because I'm not the type of finger drummer that I can perform with different velocities, but this could randomize the velocity of your hi-hat. So it's not the same velocity, it just switches it up whenever it wants to. It's just randomly switching it up, which gives it a much better feel from something I would be doing on my own, which is the same velocity. As a matter of fact, when any of my MPCs or samplers, I always have them to full velocity because my velocity naturally is just not something that I'm comfortable with. So it's pretty cool to have this humanizer right here. I've seen other samplers that have a humanizer, which is cool, but it's a lot of menu diving to trigger random notes in your sequence. But right here, just having it with one of your parameters is really fast. Now check this out. With the samples up here, you can actually truncate and chop up samples, which is really crazy. I didn't think I was going to be able to do that from this small unit, but if you want to truncate the start or the end of a sample, select the sample, and these parameters are different for these sample pads up here. Now you have your truncate for the start, and then you have the truncate for the end. So that's pretty cool. I mean, essentially you could just bring in, I wouldn't bring in a whole entire song, but maybe you could just chop up 1 or 2 bars of a record, and you don't have to micro chop them into quarter notes on your DAW. You can just bring that loop into your drum box and right here load the same loop into all of these 4 pads and just truncate the start and end point of each individual pad the way you would in any other sampler. Now let's say we want to start a brand new beat from scratch. Again, really easy to get things going. You just go right here where it says beats, select that, and I'm going to scroll through. I'm going to go all the way down to an empty slot. Let's go to one of these right here, select this value, and then we have a blank sequence. I mean, I call them sequences, but right here they're not called sequences. They're just called beats. That's something that kind of kicked me off. If I want to create a beat and I want to have sequence 1, sequence 2, and sequence 3 to save sequences, it's kind of like just saving beats in different slots, and you can audition those different beats in real time with anything being stopped. So I guess it's kind of like song mode as you're building your beat, but you have to save those beats, and they're technically like small sequences. Now, let me show you. I think this will make a little bit more sense. Right here, I don't have anything playing back. It's just an empty beat right here. If I want to set something up, like how many bars do I want this to be, I go right here to Shift, Edit, and right here I have the length. If I have 4 bars, if I want to just switch it to 2 bars, I'm able to do that right here. I'm going to put it at 2 bars, and then I go down right here to where it says quantize. If I want to turn on quantize, which I actually do, I'm going to put it up to 1/16, turn on quantize, and I just hit record, play, start, and I start jamming out. Now, if I want to switch the tempo and adjust, go a little faster, a little slower, I can go right here where it says tempo/tap tempo. I could either tap out the tempo that I wanted to be at, or I could just select that and adjust the BPM right here using this encoder. Now, it's really cool that you have tap tempo, because tap tempo, I've made videos on this before in different samplers, that this is like my best friend when it comes down to detecting the tempo of a sample. Let's say I'm going to pitch these up +2. So I'm going to see what tempo this is playing at. I could use tap tempo to see what's the tempo of this performance. So about 82, 84 beats per minute. I can go ahead and record that now that I have that drum groove and I know that the performance of these chops are at about 82 or 84. Now, when I first got this, I was not really thinking about samples. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, you know, just to come up with ideas. Pretty much have a box where I can have all my favorite drum shots or samples. I have so many samples in my hard drive, but this is pretty cool to just take with me on the go if I want to go downstairs or just put on my headphones and just come up with different patterns. At least for me, I always say this on my videos, but I'm not the best drummer or finger drummer when it comes down to drum grooves. But to have this little box to just save ideas and save different drum patterns and then come back and plug it in and record those into my samplers. That's pretty cool. But again, going through all these features, I got the samples up here. I can truncate. It's some extra features that I was not really expecting, but it's pretty cool to have those. Now, this is also a step sequencer. I'm not too big on step sequencers, but you can also go over if you want to lay down drum patterns using the step sequencer. So it's got two different functions in one box. At least for me, I'm just used to jamming out the way you saw me as I put this together. I like just freely performing my beats. Now, the price of this beat machine is at $299. And depending on when you're watching this video, on the 8th and 9th is Prime Day. So you do get a pretty good deal if you're interested in picking this up. I also have links down in the description of this video if you want more information. There's obviously a lot more this thing can do. I just cover some of my favorite features that stood out to me that I really wanted to share with you guys. So thank you for tuning into this video. Thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you guys enjoyed this time. I'll catch y'all on our next video. Peace.